Okay, it is 4 o'clock. We will call the December 11th, 2023 Salina City Commission meeting to order. I would first look to staff for confirmation the Kansas Open Meeting Act required notice has been properly provided.
Yes.
May we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Hoppick,
Here.
Commissioner Davis,
Here.
Commissioner Lankowitz,
Here.
Commissioner Longby,
Here.
Commissioner Ryan.
Here.
Okay, will those who are able please stand for a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we have no awards or proclamations or public hearings today, so that will lead us to the consent agenda.
Item 5.1, approve the minutes of the meeting of December 4th, 2023. Item 5.2, award the bid for the purchase and installation of a playground option number 1 for Oxbow Park in the amount of $135,000 to All Inclusive Rec, and authorize the city manager to authorize the purchase and installation upon the fulfillment of all prerequisites under the purchasing policy. Item 5.3, award the bid for project number 23023 for Phase 3 of concrete improvements at various city parks to Morgan Brothers Construction, Inc. in the amount of $163,343 with a 5% construction contingency for a total project authorization not to exceed $171,510.15, and authorize the city manager to execute a contract with Morgan Brothers Construction, Inc. upon fulfillment of all prerequisites under the bid documents. And item 5.4, approve resolution number 23-8172, receiving and accepting the 2023 Salina Land Bank conveyance report.
Okay, thank you. Is there an item a commissioner would like to remove from the consent agenda?
I just have a quick question on item 5.2, the playground equipment.
Jeff Hammond, Parks and Recreation Director.
What happens to the old playground equipment? Is it repurposed, sold, scrapped?
Generally, it's salvaged. We would scrap it and get the value of the scrap of the metal of that playground. We haven't looked into it, and I don't have it prepared for right now, but there's also an option of other communities looking into assigning a surplus and auctioning it off and having that someone buying it for them to repurpose it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wondered if that ever happens. All right, thank you.
As we look at allowing other communities to repurpose it, one of the things we have to be mindful are the safety standards, and not only of it in its current condition, but can it be disassembled and reassembled in a way that meets safety specs.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I move for approval of the consent agenda.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve consent agenda items 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, and 5.4. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes 5-0. That will lead us to administration.
Item 6.1, approve resolution number 23-8173, adopting the 2024 through 2028 capital improvement program.
Ms. Pack.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Debbie Pack, Director of Finance and Administration. This is kind of the last step of the budget process for 2024. It's the adoption of the detailed items on the capital improvement plan. Capital improvement plan has kind of two distinct categories. One is the larger items that are typically debt financed and are longer life projects. And the second is what we consider the sub-CIP, which is basically a mechanism for City Commission to give approval for specific items to be purchased, typically out of cash, but they're typically over the city manager's purchasing authority. We discussed a lot of these items and a lot of these plans that we went through during the July 3rd study session, and that was after a very long process that the departments went through to kind of get our financial planning into a long-term plan. And so we've had this in front of you before, but this is kind of the final step of you approving each of the individual type of projects within the plan. As part of the long-term financial plan, we also, in July, we also presented a debt service plan, which is on slide 5 of the presentation that I provided you. We also provided the original CIP and a long-term projection and financing plan for the sales tax capital plan. So as a result, the original CIP that was presented to you on July 3rd, staff is recommending that we make some changes to that based on these other plans that we kind of have put into place for debt financing and for the sales tax capital projections. And so on page 2 of your staff report, I provided you the original CIP plan as presented in July, and then I provided you kind of what the adjustments are. And as you can see from that, there were adjustments made to the hike bike trail in years 2025, 26, 27, and 28 from $50,000 to $75,000. There were adjustments to the park's capital improvement plan, and these numbers are based on what the departments put in their long-term CIP for each of these individual years. So the park's improvement plan was increased in 2024, 2025, and 2026. And then the streets improvements that also comes from sales tax was increased in 25, 26, was lowered a little bit in 26, increased in 27, and increased in 28. And in addition to those cash projects, we added a few of the debt finance projects that came about during different strategic planning and different conversations. So in 2024, we added West Magnolia Phase 1, which basically, as I've talked to Mr. Toich, Department of Public Works, that really is 135 to about Virginia Drive. However, with the grant that we recently received, that project may be changed, that scope may be changed a little bit. The facility audit improvements, we added that to 2024. That's something we brought forward to you just a few weeks ago. In 2025, we added East Magnolia and the West Magnolia Phase 2. 2026, we added Broadway improvements. And that's basically as far as we went, and changes that we made to the CIP. The sub-CIP, as you recall, you have approved levels of spending basically for sub-CIP, and at this point we've brought to you the approval for the specific items in those allocations. So in the Parks and Maintenance Fund, we're allocating $1.8 million, a little over $1.8 million. In buildings and facilities, almost $800,000. In vehicles and equipment, about $2.4 million, and in streets, $3.7 million. Just for your own purposes, any cash project that we do that exceeds the city manager's authority and any project that requires debt financing, those will all come back to you again for approval for those purchases or for those approvals of financing at a later date. So our action items for you today, your options are to approve Resolution 238173, adopting the 2024 to 2028 Capital Improvement Program. You could approve the resolution with amendments, postpone consideration, or not approve the resolution. Staff recommends option 1, and I would stand for any questions.
Okay, I'll look to my left. Any questions?
Nope.
We've pretty much discussed this during other
Many
meetings.
times.
So yeah, many
Many
times.
times.
So, okay. Are there questions or comments from the public? Okay, if not, I will bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, I move we approve resolution number 238173, adopting the 24 through 28 capital improvement program.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 23-8173, adopting the 2024 through 2028 capital improvement program. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That item passes 5-0. That will lead us to item 6.2.
Item 6.2, approve ordinance number 23-11187 on second reading relating to prohibitions against any person obstructing in public places pedestrian traffic, vehicular traffic, or marked vehicular parking.
Okay, ordinance number 23-11187 was passed on first reading on December 4th. Since that time, no comments have been received. Are there any questions or comments from the commission for staff? Okay, any questions or comments on this item from the public? If not, I will bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, I move we approve ordinance number 23-11187 on second reading.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 23-11187 on second reading. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Linkowitz?
Aye.
Commissioner Longbine?
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan?
Aye.
Mayor Hoppick?
Aye. That item passes 5-0. That will lead us to item 6.3.
Item 6.3, approve ordinance number 23-11186 on second reading, amending section 1-5.1 of the Salina Code regarding consideration of ordinances.
Okay, ordinance number 23-11186 was passed on first reading on December 4th. Since that time, no comments have been received. Any comments or questions from the commission for staff?
I had one. As we discussed this last week, did we put a provision in that we can, I guess my question is, what would it take to provision to have a second reading? If there would be something we feel that needed a little more.
Right, I don't know that it would be a second reading per se, it'd be a postponement, so you could postpone action and to whatever point in time that you wanted, whether that's the next week or whether you wanted it further out into the future, and then you could also instruct staff to, make public announcements or gather additional information as you saw fit.
Okay, I was thinking we had something in there that we could vote to.
I think when we discussed it, we felt like as a commission, if we felt like there was some type of concern from the public, that would be the opportunity to postpone it a week, and that would be basically taking the place of having a second reading.
Right.
I think is, if I remember right.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, we may have actually referred to it as a second reading, but procedurally, there wouldn't be any call for a second reading. It'd just be postponing that.
To give
unless
another-
you had another thought.
No, I just wanted to confirm that that's certainly always at the discretion of the commission as to how you might wish to handle that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, questions or comments from the public? Okay, if not, I will bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, I move we approve ordinance number 23-11186 on second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 23-11186 on second reading. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Linkowitz?
Aye.
Commissioner Longbine?
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan?
Aye.
Mayor Hoppick?
Aye. That item passes 5-0. That will bring us to item 6.4.
Item 6.4, approve ordinance number 23-11185 on second reading, authorizing the city of Salina, Kansas to issue taxable multifamily bonds, Series 2023, the Cedarhurst project, in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $15 million for the purpose of the acquisition, construction, and equipping of a commercial facility, and authorizing certain other related documents and actions, and for the exemption of sales tax for material used in the construction of the project.
Thank you. Ordinance number 23-11185 was passed on first reading on December 4th. Since that time, no comments have been received. Any comments or questions from the commission?
None.
Nope.
Okay. Comments or questions from the public? Okay, if not, I will bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, I move we approve ordinance number 23-11185 on second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 23-11185 on second reading. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Linkowitz?
Aye.
Commissioner Longbine?
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan?
Aye.
Mayor Hoppick?
Aye. That item passes 5-0. That will lead us to item 6.5.
Item 6.5, approve ordinance number 23-11184 on second reading, authorizing the city of Salina, Kansas to issue taxable industrial revenue bonds, Series 2023, the Geoprobe project, in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $3,729,417.31 for the purpose of financing the acquisition, construction, and equipping of an additional manufacturing facility addition in the city of Salina, and authorizing certain other related documents and actions, and for the exemption of sales tax for material used in the construction of the project.
Okay, ordinance number 23-11184 was passed on first reading on December 4th. Since that time, no comments have been received. Again, do I have any comments or questions from the commission?
Nope.
Okay, comments or questions from the public? Okay, I will bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, I move we approve ordinance number 23-11184 on second reading.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 23-11184 on second reading. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Linkowitz?
Aye.
Commissioner Longby?
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan?
Aye.
Mayor Hoppick?
Aye. That item passes 5-0. That will lead us to item 6.6.
Item 6.6, approve ordinance number 23-11183 on second reading, updating and modifying where alcoholic beverages may be consumed on public property in the city of Salina and restricting open containers.
Okay, ordinance number 23-11183 was passed on first reading on December 4th. Since that time, no comments have been received. Questions or comments from the commission? Questions or comments from the public? Okay, if not, I will bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, I move we approve ordinance number 23-11183 on second reading.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 23-11183 on second reading. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Linkowitz?
Aye.
Commissioner Longby?
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan?
Aye.
Mayor Hoppick?
Aye. That item passes 5-0. For those of you that were not here last week or didn't watch, it seems like we flew through a lot of items, but we were here till 8 o'clock last week. So in case you want to know, they were discussed thoroughly. So it seems like we went through a lot of stuff in a hurry there. So, okay, that will lead us to item 6.7.
Item 6.7, approve resolution number 23-8178, authorizing the acceptance of a gifted oil painting entitled Smoky River by Birger Sandzen.
Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Brad Anderson, Director of Arts and Humanities for the city. Thanks to the generous offer from the Karen Hale Young family, the city of Salina is being offered a donation, an important work of art by Birger Sandzen, a longtime painter and painting professor at Bethany College. The 30 by 40 inch oil painting of the Smoky Hill River, entitled Smoky River, was completed in 1921 and purchased on installments that same year by supporters of the Salina Public Library. The installments took place over about a 4-year period. The work was purchased at auction recently, and the owners wished to make that painting available to the public and members of the city of Salina. The Karen Hale Young family indicated they wished to honor the original women who purchased the work and the Salina community for their strong interest and support for keeping the painting publicly visible in Salina. They believe the city's public art collection is the best place for that work to reside. So if accepted by you for inclusion in the public collection, the work would initially be placed in the exhibition entryway at the Smoky Hill Museum. The museum has excellent supervision and security, is free of charge to enter, and their care and preservation of the region's historic artifacts make it an excellent fit for the public viewing of that work for the future. While the painting was listed in quote-unquote very good condition by the auction house, there are some minor areas that could be retouched in the future. The painting was inspected by the Arts and Humanities staff and a curator from the Sandzen Memorial Gallery in late November. It was shipped to our offices and then was continued to be insured by the donor until a time that transfer of ownership would take place. So it's a global insurance that the work has been covered on her dime while we had a chance to inspect it. The curator from the Sandzen, Corey Sherman North, was very helpful in her assessment of the work and believes that the work is ready for public display. The donors have also agreed to an additional financial gift to the city if you accept this into the public collection, to pay for some minor conservation that needs to take place, and if at the same time that the conservation would be done, a reframing of the work. The current frame is the original frame, but it was provided most likely by either the Friends of the Library or the women who helped negotiate the purchase of this piece on behalf of the library. It doesn't have historical significance or value, and it looks it looks tired. So at the time that any minor repairs are made to the oil painting, we received an estimate for what the cost for both framing and that repair would be, and it's just under $5,000. That also included shipping. We may have an option for a less expensive shipping option. The Sandzen Memorial Gallery staff has offered to transport that work for us when they take other Sandzens that they are responsible for the restoration of out to the conservators in Denver. They have offered to take that piece with them, and we have the professional packaging and wooden crate to be able to safely ship the work with them. So we might be able to take advantage of that if you agree to accept the work. That would probably be done in the next 12 to 18 months. It wouldn't be a special shipping, and there isn't a high priority to get this repair work done that needs to happen, and it can safely be displayed in the interim until they're already making a trip out. This would be a very significant addition to the Arts and Humanities Public Art Collection, but I'm confident in the professional staff that we have and the museum for the proper handling, care, and maintenance of the work for future generations to enjoy. There's an estimate of just under $5,000 in repair and reframing or restoration. And after 100 years of the painting hanging in public spaces, I wouldn't anticipate significant care or upkeep after this. It's an honor and a joy to present this opportunity to you today, and it's my hope you'll accept option 1 to approve Resolution 238171 to authorize the city manager to sign the agreement accepting a gift from Karen Hale Young family of an oil painting entitled Smoky River by Birger Sandzen into the public art collection. You also have the option of asking for some clarification or some different information from the staff that we'd be happy to help and postpone acceptance of the work or to deny acceptance. I hope you'll choose option 1 today. The donor is traveling and not available. She was going to try to either YouTube or maybe be available to listen in on the acceptance of this gift, but I'll stand for any questions that you have.
Okay, I will start to my right. Any questions?
No questions, but more of a comment. Just what an amazing holiday gift to the city that is, or miracle if you would be. It'd be tremendous to have this work of art back into our town. So resounding yes for me on this.
You said it would be up to a year before it's transported out to Denver, is that correct?
Yes, that's an estimate by the officials at the Sandzen. If we decided, or it's your direction or whatever, if it was decided that, we should just ship it out and pay the shipping costs and go ahead and have it reframed and the minor repairs that need to take place, we can do that at any time. Personally, what I would say with the excitement and enthusiasm by the community to see it and to have retained it and have at least have one of the Sandzen paintings here on public display, it might be nice to celebrate that for a little bit, and we can do so in a responsible way that doesn't take a lot of staff time to get that installed at the
That was
museum.
my next question. Between
Yeah.
now and then, it's going to be displayed?
It would be displayed, at the, and I did kind of a cheesy photo for you there to have a little bit of an idea, but there's a temporary case inside the entryway of the museum. That case would be
yeah,
rolled
this-
out, and then,
This looks like we could frame that.
yeah, this is, if you have an interest in seeing the damage that was listed, the most significant damage, and actually, I don't think it shows on, yeah, actually it does. If you look in the lower, very lower right corner, where there's some gold along the flora and fauna there, you'll see a little brown stripe. That little brown stripe is where the painting slid inside the frame at some point in its history, and it looks like it removed that little piece of paint. We don't know whether it's stuck to the back inside of the frame or whether it's gone, but the restorers have had a lot of experience in touching up pieces that were in far worse condition than this painting was, and they're confident that they can take care of that. What I'm waiting to see is once they inspect that and are given instructions to reframe it, whether securing that frame tight, or that painting it tight inside of a frame, that may be an area that's lost on the edge of the frame anyway, because it's right up against the edge of the canvas. And so to secure that and to have something over the top of that, it may be that area wouldn't be restored, and it would just be firmly secured within the frame. But I'm waiting for people that do this for a living rather than me speculating on what they might find. So, and then there was a couple of other references. There's some two small quarter-inch diameter areas that it looks like sometime in the piece's history somebody tried to do a repair, and it isn't very good. It's not glaring. You know, I didn't see it the first 4 times I looked at the detailed photos from the auction house, but when Corey was there from the Sandzen, she was helpful in pointing that out and saying, I think this is something that you probably ought to have repaired at the same time. And then based on the work that the Sandzen has had done at this conservation company, and what they inspected on this, we feel like we've got a very good estimate that the donor's providing to cover the cost of that repair, whether it's next week or in another year. So,
Well, I'd like to reiterate the gratitude to the Karen Hale Young family and their gracious donation that, turned a tense situation into a positive. And
it was one of the best calls of my life after the auction, a couple of days, to have her call and say, what do you think? Would you be willing to accept this as a part of your public collection? And what an honor. What a wonderful opportunity that we have to step up our game a little bit. We have 425 pieces in the public collection, mostly from the River Festival. Some have come from other donations or estates over the years or something, where somebody may have gifted something they purchased at the festival or had, but we don't do very much of that.
so where can the public see some of those works?
Those works are behind you. They're in offices. They're in boardrooms that are publicly accessible. They're in the public schools. I believe that most of the ones that are out on public display are on our website, and if not, we can provide a spreadsheet of where those are and how to access them. But we rotate those works. They're at our offices and other government offices and not-for-profit organizations in town that have a public meeting space. And so we began, as we ran out of government and other public buildings, to look at private schools and other places, but that had public access. Kansas Wesleyan's got a sculpture on their grounds, and they've also got 2 or 3 River Festival acquisitions that are on long-term loans. So we do agreements with them, and then we monitor and check their condition and locations on an annual basis.
Thank you. You got a whole wall back behind you for
Yeah.
page 7.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you know anybody that sits on the building authority, you just have to twist an arm, ask if they'll take
would be
another
me.
hole, and then come shopping, because we're happy to share.
Be there for another month.
Yeah.
Okay. Any-
Is this a painting that would require special lighting, glass in front of it, humidity control? You know, they're very, very old paintings in these
It's a good
industries.
question, and I didn't go over all of the details that were included in a blue sheet. But oil painting, by its nature, is relatively stable. Lighting doesn't affect it the same way that a drawing or a photograph would be affected, or UV light. It is subject to that, but it's more subject to dust and dirt and aging of the oil over time. One of the things the curator said about the condition of this one is that she's seen similar aged pieces by Sandzen that are much yellower. And the whites of the sky in this painting are really still quite white. And so we're not expecting the expense that would have to come with a professional cleaning, because, as you might imagine, 100-year-old oil paint that's in ridges like this, if you had to clean it, it's a very delicate process to not damage the painting more by cleaning than just leaving it. So I feel really good about that, that we don't have to go through the formal cleaning process. To answer your question, in terms of the general practice for the display of the Sandzens, especially the painting, is to leave the surface open so that you can fully see and appreciate without reflection. The brushstroke that's on that, we are going to take some care to hang it a little bit higher than what maybe some work in public around this building would be. And then the museum's locating an appropriate piece of furniture to put in front of that underneath to kind of keep people at a distance. And then once it's hung and we kind of determine what the activity level is, whether additional security, like there's some museums and galleries have a laser sighting that is mounted at the ceiling, and if you get too close or get your nose too close, an alarm would go off, or a verbal reminder saying please step back. We think we can do that with just the human beings that are already in the space and signage and the furniture, that we won't have to go to that measure, but it's not an expensive option if it is. So
It is a very gracious gift, and I guess just on behalf of the community and the rest of my commissioners here, it's thank you very much, and owe you a debt of gratitude to Mrs. Young. So
it's
Great thing.
nice to have her trust and her generosity to really honor the spirit of the folks here in town who've been a part of the art community for generations. There is one small thing, but I'd like to make a clarification on some bad writing that I did in the opening of the blue sheet. I made a reference to there being a petition to the Salina Public Library. There was a petition, there were names that were collected, but that wasn't presented or given to the library board and staff until after the auction had completed, and it was during a board meeting that was later. And the way that I wrote that, it didn't sound that way. So I wanted to clarify that. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Any other questions? Okay.
I think that's questions from the commission. Are there any questions or comments from the public on this item? Okay, if not, I will bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, I move we approve resolution number 23 8178 and authorize the city manager to sign the agreement accepting a gifted oil painting entitled Smoky River by Birger Sandzen.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 23-8178 and authorize the city manager to sign the agreement accepting a gifted oil painting entitled Smoky River by Birger Sandzen. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That item passes 5-0. Again, thank you to Ms. Hale for that. That will lead us to item 6.8.
Item 6.8, approve resolution number 23-8164 relating to the establishment of a special improvement district for water, sanitary sewer, street, and drainage improvements in Wheatland Valley Addition, and authorizing the city manager to execute an improvement district development agreement between the city of Salina and Wheatland Development Company, Inc.
Okay, due to a conflict on this item, I will recuse myself and turn it over to Vice Mayor Onbein.
Thank you, Mr. Tuck. Thank you. Thank you, Vice Mayor and Commissioners. This is a development project that's a continuation of the original Wheatland Valley subdivision that was started in about 2018 is what I show here, is when our last commission authorized the staff to prepare a feasibility report. It was 29 lots out of 77 total back then, and that has been completed, and there's plenty of houses being built now. You can see a few of them on the aerial, but there's quite a few more out there now. So Mr. Daly is wanted to continue the phased approach that we have here. So phase one is kind of was this area right along Markley Road. Markley Road over here. Wheatland Drive, this side, kind of this whole area, and then it went about halfway back towards the east there along the north side of Magnolia Hills Estates here, which has been here quite a while. Here's the newer part of Magnolia Hills Estates, and then kind of in line with that, the newer part of this area will be phase two, which is this area here, and then this area right here in the middle with the two cul-de-sacs. Phase three then will be this area up here at the top. Part of phase one was building a detention pond down there in the southeast corner, as well as quite a bit of infrastructure, sewer lines, storm sewer lines, water lines. A lot of that infrastructure went in phase one, and so some of those assessments were really the whole subdivision paid for detention, sewer, and water for part of their some of the main lines to go in. So then this phase will connect to a lot of those lines. We'll still have some sewer, water, and storm sewer costs, but they've actually already had some assessments to them. The majority of the project that was before have about $38,000 in assessments for the lots that were built on, and then the lots that are not able to be built on but did have sewer, water, and storm sewer assessments, around $5,000 for those. So this project then would be quite a bit more. So as I guess just looking at the fiscal note on page 2, it's $58,000 per lot. So I mean, really, for 27 lots, 29 before, 27 now, just with the costs that have gone up since the 2021 when this was constructed. Actually, it's just quite a bit more. I was asking our staff engineer why there's so much more, but there's nothing unique about them. It is what it is. Cedar Ridge was just a few months ago. I know we talked about that, and they were about $58,000. That's what they came in at, and Cedar Point was the one that's the one we're being built now. So anyway, you'll see quite a bit more subdivision developments coming through soon. So we'll see what the Stone Lakes and the Magnolia Hills is, Lakeview Estates, Overlook Estates. There's quite a few that are looking to be moving forward as the next few months roll around. So I guess anything unique about this? I guess part of it. One last unique thing. The Markley Road sidewalk was part of the first phase. Actually, I got assessed to the whole thing. So everybody gets to benefit from the 10-foot sidewalk that's along Markley there that definitely is getting used. We're glad it's there. We partnered with their contractor in phase 1 to build that, half from the developer and half by the city. So that's a little bit unique. And then long-term wise, they've got an assessment, future assessment, possibly for Markley Road if it ever hits 6,500 vehicles, basically, is what kind of the threshold is. It's been determined for that, but we're quite a ways from that so far. So I'll stand for questions.
Questions?
No questions.
And Mr. Daly is here if you have any questions about anything.
Yeah, I drive by there frequently, and
Yeah.
it's filling in fast.
It is. It's got some good builders moving quick.
Could I just ask for my own information, how many homes have been completed in there? And as a second, how many are under construction? Just because we kind of keep track in our own minds, we've got a housing study that says we're hitting certain targets, so maybe just give us a little information.
Okay, there's
Can
13
you give your
homes.
name,
Oh, I'm
Mr.
sorry. Dan Daly, owner and operator, Wheatland Valley Development, 942 Barlow Drive. There are 13 homes at one phase or another of either just starting or completed, and I think there's, let's see. There's about half of those are done, and I think there's 3 occupied, sold and occupied with yards going in. So this phase is 29 lots. All but 5 of them are sold, and we have that many houses under construction presently.
Good.
And it's been a little over a year since we started selling a lot, so I
Great.
feel like it's going well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions for Mr. Daly?
Nope.
Any questions or comments from the public? Bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, I move that we approve resolution number 238164 and authorize the city manager to execute an improvement district development agreement between the city of Salina and Wheatland Development Company, Inc.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 23-8164 and authorize the city manager to execute an improvement district development agreement between the city of Salina and Wheatland Development Company Incorporated. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. We'll welcome back Mayor Hoppick.
Okay, we are ready for item 6.9.
Item 6.9, purchasing policy updates, is 2 actions. Item 6.9A is to approve resolution number 23-8171, establishing a purchasing policy for the city of Salina and repealing resolution number 20-7900. And item 6.9B is to approve ordinance number 23-11188 on first reading, amending Chapter 2 of the Salina Code pertaining to administration by amending and repealing Article 12, Public Improvement Procedures.
Mr. Wood.
Mayor and Commissioners, Jacob Wood, Deputy City Managers. The current purchasing policy was adopted by the City Commission in 2020. As some of you recall, that was a pretty big overhaul from the previous purchasing policies. So that's been in place for a couple of years now, and we've just found a few things that we think we could update in the purchasing policy to make it more efficient and a little bit more effective for city staff, while still meeting the intent. And the intent of the purchasing policy is to maintain public confidence regarding purchasing, achieve the best value for the city, and establish appropriate purchasing controls and foster broad-based competition. So I will go over a few of the changes that we're proposing today. The big things are starting in section 4.0, which is the purchasing threshold. The first thing there is is increasing the purchasing amount that's required for a purchase order from $1,000 to $2,500. Before the update to the purchasing policy in 2020, we did not have a requirement on purchase orders, so this was something that was brand new to the purchasing policy. And as we have implemented it over time, we found that $1,000 limit is kind of low, particularly with inflation. So what that means is if somebody has something, you know, they're trying to do their job and they need to buy something that's more than $1,000, they can't just do it. They have to go back to the office, go through a process, write out a purchase order. So we feel like increasing that number from 1,000 to 2,500 would just benefit the employees as we're trying to work through things and not add additional requirements on there. Now, there will be reviews. They do have to still do an invoice, and it has to go through a process, and it will be approved. So it's not like they just get to spend whatever they want, but a little bit less process than what we currently have today. Another item in that section, which was actually something that came up in City Commission discussion a few months ago, as we were talking about going to reducing the number of meetings, was increasing the city manager's purchasing authority from $30,000 to $50,000. There's cities across Kansas have a pretty wide variety in how much the city manager's authority is, ranging from $20,000 to over $100,000. Typically, the organizations that have larger budgets have bigger purchasing authority for the city manager. So this purchasing threshold would establish just the different methods in which city staff would have to go through to get approvals at different levels. And so we're recommending increasing the city manager's authority from $30,000 to $50,000. Section 8 is cooperative purchasing and state and federal bids. This is a kind of a rewrite of that section to kind of get us up with the times. In the past, the state bids and other communities used to do bids where they would say, so the state of Kansas would say, we have a 1-ton pickup truck, here's the specifications for that truck, and then you would get a price and you could go out and purchase that vehicle for that price. There are some new conglomerates out there, Sourcewell being one of those you've heard about recently, that does a more qualifications-based bidding process. So they'll go out and look for specific vendors that are qualified and not necessarily based on price alone. Now, pricing is part of that, so they do provide discounts. So what this section does, or the rewrite of this section, will allow us to use some of those conglomerates, but it outlines a process by which we still have to go out and get competitive prices from all or any of the bidders that are listed as qualified vendors from those conglomerates. Section 11, routine maintenance, repair, and operational costs. This is a section that's been part of the purchasing policy since 2020. It basically has large items that are operational in nature. There's a list of them that were there. We went through and looked at things that we felt we could add to that, or things that are just kind of missing that need to be in there. So we're recommending that we include some new items, which would be parks items such as mulch, landscape material, and chemicals, some of the annual street maintenance projects and utility projects, health and dental insurance premiums, and then vehicle lease payments is something that's not in that section, but that's something that's new with the enterprise that we felt would be appropriate to put in there. And then there's a new section we'd like you to add, which would be section 12, project authorization when a city acts as a project manager. We just really don't have a method to do this right now, and we've had some items come forward. We're just trying to outline a process for how we could manage a project when the city is actually doing that project management. And so what that section would allow us to do is come to the city commission and say, okay, here's the overall project, get project authorization to move forward with the project with a budget, and then individual items in that project, we would be able to move forward with a competitive process, but we wouldn't have to come back to the city commission over and over again on that same project. So still get approval from the city commission, you just wouldn't have to have additional approval over and over. It would allow us to kind of work through those projects a little bit more smoothly. And then I'm also asking or recommending that we repeal Article 12, which is public improvement procedures in the Salina Code. This section of the code was adopted in 1995. The city approved a charter ordinance which exempted us from a state law that outlines how public improvements are supposed to work. And basically what we did is we took, instead of using the state law, we put our own regulations in there. If we repeal this and follow the processes outlined in the purchasing policy, it kind of does the same thing as the purchasing policy. So what this would do would just kind of allow us to have a little bit more latitude in how we do those purchases, and and it would provide one place where there's guidelines. Right now, we have guidelines in the purchasing policy, but then you also have to go and look in the code when you do a public improvement and make sure you follow those rules as well. So it would just kind of streamline that process. With that, I'd be happy to, the options, I guess, are to approve the resolution 2381 if you concur with all of our recommendations, or you could approve it with amendments, and then, or you could deny altogether. And then I'd ask you to approve the ordinance as well. And I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Questions to?
Only question I have is 50,000 enough? Do we need to maybe adjust it a little bit more? And I'm just asking that question based on the fact that our current trend with everything is it just keeps going up. And at what point, I mean, for instance, the example of a 1-ton work truck was brought up, and just off the top of my head, I can easily see that being well over 50. And I mean, I guess it depends what the other commissioners feel in terms of what our time is worth. And I mean, that kind of purchase, it would seem not necessarily a waste of time, but it would seem like an unnecessary step for something as simple as a truck.
And I think Mr. Wood clarified it, but these purchases still have to go through the budget process, so they have to be an authorized item to begin with by way of the budget, and they have to fit within the budget. So this is not carte blanche approval at whatever dollar amount you selected. I think Commissioner Linkowitz probably described it correctly. It's really a question of what threshold do you want to consider it at the governing body level. Going to 50,000 is certainly some additional latitude. I don't know, Mr. Wood, did you happen to do a kind of inventory of different price points? Do you have a sense of activity at different thresholds?
So there are a few that are more than 50,000, but there's not a great deal. And I would say, the larger communities, obviously, Wichita and some of the other larger communities are going to have larger purchasing authority. Just because their budget is so much bigger, they don't have time to go through those smaller purchases. Community of our size, I did see it range from 20,000. I believe the 100,000 was Lawrence. It was either Lawrence or Manhattan. I don't have that spreadsheet on the top of my head. That was at that $100,000 level. But it is certainly one of those things that's at the discretion of the governing body. If you feel comfortable going with a higher number, you certainly could do that. It's still going to go through a process. We're still going to have a purchasing level. We'll still have, right now, anything that's over $20,000, that requisition comes through the city manager's office. I review those and look at all of them. So it would be the same case. I wouldn't anticipate we would change that. Even if we move to 50,000, we're not changing the threshold by which it comes for review in the city manager's office. So anything is still going to have that level of review.
It's sad where we're at, that we're having to do this, just like the previous resolution we heard on the development. The price is skyrocketing. And if we don't come to the end of that, pretty soon we're all going to be in trouble. So I'm comfortable raising that threshold, and I can say I have full confidence in City Manager Scragg for spending wisely and not recklessly. If we had some brand new guy here, I would probably pump the brakes a little bit. So,
I appreciate the vote of confidence. It won't always be me, though. So you need to be comfortable with your code, independent of me personally.
Yeah, I just hope the public realizes that we don't just throw money right and left at things. There is the budget process and considerations.
Actually, what Commissioner Lombard said was exactly what I was saying. This is not so much a referendum on whether our current city manager should have a higher spending limit. It's just the office of city manager. I'd trust this guy probably trust him with my checkbook better than I trust myself. But, the larger the amounts, there's always perceived danger that if you string two of these together, you can actually get a large project through without coming through the city commission. And to Commissioner Scragg's credit, he has realized, the potential appearance of that in the past and brought things here that probably didn't need to come here, but to make sure that, the optics were good, he brought it here. But, I'm certainly very comfortable with the 50,000. I would be curious also, how often do we go above that? I mean, if it's once or twice a year, then, our time isn't that valuable. We can't review it. If it's often, then we need to review that number and probably move it up.
It'll help get things done.
Are there checks in Section 11 or the others that we had an instance some years ago where there was a recurring expense. We took on an obligation and there were purchases made every week, and it got to be quite a substantial amount of money, and it ran under the radar, went way over the city manager's purchasing authority over the course of a month or two. Is there something that alerts the management that something like that is happening?
There's a couple things going on there. One is those routine purchases, the purchasing policy authorizes, so whether that's chemicals or the light bill or whatever the case may be. But then there's also the guidance that talks about the cumulative total cost of a project. And so that's kind of the change that we made when we adopted the policy, and that's how we've administered it. We try to be mindful that if it's a project that has multiple components, what's that total going to be, or if it's an ongoing expense.
So if a department head started to pay a recurring similar expense, then would their limit be $2,500 before it rises to the attention of the outside the department, or is it a $50,000 level before?
Yeah, no, that's where the purchase order does come into play. So if it's below that $2,500 in this policy, that I suppose you could, I don't want to say there's a way to work any system that's out there. I mean, we have measures that are in place. The finance department looks at things. We have. I think it would be difficult to do it, but I can't say that that we can protect against any kind of abuse of the system. But purchase orders, I think, certainly does help that situation because they do have to get approval at that level. So that's not just they can't just give you an invoice after the fact. It's got to go through a process to get that approval. So I think we would likely see something that came through, and then we'd have to figure out and determine, okay, is this something that's in an inappropriate spend, or is it part of your budget? Is it operational? Is it a program that we didn't budget or weren't prepared for? Okay. So I haven't seen anything like that would raise alarms.
I think only Mr. Scragg and our legal counsel have seen. They understand what I'm talking about. The new guys don't, but. I think you might remember the incident I'm thinking of, and I just hope there's checks in there to prevent that from happening again.
Yeah, and to Mr. Wood's point, I think we would deal with that as not being compliant with the purchasing policy. We may find ourselves playing catch-up depending on how it played out, but the purchase order and the expectation would be clear, and we just have to deal with it accordingly.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with increasing the purchasing thresholds. My question was on Section 12, we talk about having the city work as the project manager. And again, I think we have somebody on staff that, we're lucky, we're fortunate enough has that ability. Can you give us an example of maybe at a point where we would have done that in the past if we'd have had this in place? Or
well, we actually did one, but it was just more complicated, and that's the restrooms at the old pool tennis. We brought forward all those different components of work, electrical and flooring and plumbing, and called to your attention that these were estimates that we'd have to go out and get competitive bids, but it was a one-off that our purchasing policy didn't contemplate. We're not trying to build that in. And as Mr. Wood described, we could bring the project forward, we could have the elements of the project, we could have a project budget, but that would give the project manager the ability to go out and competitively bid each one of those elements as that project's progressing, rather than having to have everything identified and bid out in advance and ahead of when the work might actually be performed.
It kind of allows us to do what we do now with, with outside contractors. So if we had hired somebody else to do the same pool project, we would have said, we would like you to do the pool project. They would bid it, give us a number, and then, they would manage the subs and they would do all those individual items within whatever that dollar amount
You
was.
said pool, do you mean bathroom?
I meant the bathroom at the old pool house.
That's going.
Yeah.
I was confused
It
for a
was a
second there.
pool.
I didn't remember a pool project.
Yeah,
so.
sorry. Yeah, the bathroom project at the old.
How's that project progressing, since we're talking about it?
It is progressing. I think we identified a structural repair that had to be made to the roof that slowed things down a bit. But I was out there probably 3 weeks ago walking through it, and they're tearing into it. But to Mr. Wood's point, if it weren't a city employee, we'd be dealing with the general contractor. We'd award the contract to the general contractor. They'd be dealing with the subs. This kind of puts us in a similar position. If we exceed the budget, we'd have to come back for additional authorization.
Okay, are there any questions or comments on these items from the public? Okay, if not, I will bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, I move we approve ordinance number 23-11188 on first reading.
I think we need to do the resolution first. I don't know, does it make any difference on the order? I would
move we approve resolution number 23-8171, establishing a purchase policy for the city of Salina and repealing the resolution number 20-7900.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 23-8171, establishing a purchasing policy for the city of Salina and repealing resolution number 20-7900. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That item passes 5-0. That will lead us to item B on that.
I move we approve resolution number 23-11188 on first reading.
And that is actually ordinance, not resolution.
Did I say resolution?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Approve it says resolution right up here.
Second.
We'll approve ordinance number 23-11188 on first reading.
I'll second the ordinance.
There we go. Now we got it. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 23-11188 on first reading. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That item passes 5-0, and the second reading will be next Monday. Thank you. That will lead us to item development business, item 7.1.
Item 7.1, approve ordinance number 23-11190 on first reading, amending the zoning ordinance to add group daycare homes providing care for no more than 12 children in an unoccupied dwelling to the list of conditional uses allowed in the RS, R, R1, R2, R2.5, R3, and MH-S zoning districts.
Okay, Mr. Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. As you know, city staff has been meeting periodically with representatives of the Saline County Health Department, the Salina YMCA, and the Salina United Way Child Care Initiative, and we're just looking at our local codes and specifically zoning ordinance provisions that might be construed as barriers to providing additional child care services in the community. And it's a very complex and multifaceted issue, but the parts that are under our control are our own codes and regulations. And so presently, if you have property that's zoned residential, there's two options. One is you can be an in-home daycare provider, provide care in the occupied dwelling that you live in, or we also have child care centers that are in residential zones that are located in churches, schools, YMCA-type facilities, or standalone facility like the Martin Luther King Daycare Center. But those are regulated as child care centers by the State Fire Marshal and by the Kansas Department of Health and Environment standards. And so the proposal that is before you today is to create kind of a middle category which is something that would be classified as a group daycare home and have numerical limits, but would be a home that's not necessarily lived in by the operator. And part of the origin of that discussion is that the Dane Foundation, or Dane Hansen Foundation, that operates in north central and northwest Kansas, initiated a program where they initiated construction of modular homes that were designed to work as group daycare homes, and applicants can submit an application for these that are 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom houses. And so they were giving grants for that, and in meetings with this group, they said if we were able to get one of these modular homes, could we take it and place it on a vacant lot? And our response was, well, it could either be lived in by the operator, or we would consider it to be a non-residential or commercial building. And so this is a middle ground that would allow either a modular home to be brought in with a limitation of no more than 12 children, or allow a vacant house to be converted to daycare. And so under this proposal, that would be a conditional use, and that would require notification of neighbors, a public hearing, and approval by the Planning Commission. And I did want to note that the city already has aesthetic standards for modular homes that are introduced into existing neighborhoods. The only thing that the text amendment does not really address or can address is the fact that historically the county appraiser's office has made a determination that if you have a home and no one lives in the home and it's used for daycare, they will treat it for property tax purposes as a commercial dwelling. So even if all local codes and the state fire marshal and the Kansas Department of Health and Environment treat it as a dwelling for regulatory purposes, as it stands now, unless it's owned and operated by a not-for-profit agency, then it's going to be subject to being taxed as a commercial property instead of residential. And so in our research and experience, we're only aware of one facility that's operating in a residential area in an unoccupied dwelling, and that's the Four Seasons Preschool on Lewis, which has been there since 1972. But in reviewing the property taxes for that property, the county appraiser does classify it as a commercial property because it's not occupied. So the Planning Commission looked at this and unanimously endorsed this as providing an additional option for providing child care in residential neighborhoods. So this comes to you with a recommendation from the Planning Commission for approval. And so your options this evening would be to concur with their recommendation and approve Ordinance 231190, which would add group daycare homes providing care for no more than 12 children in an unoccupied dwelling to the list of conditional uses in residential zoning districts. You could approve that ordinance with any amendments or changes supported by a majority of commission members. You could send this back to the Planning Commission for additional study or discussion based on any guidance you want to provide them, or you could postpone consideration to a future meeting date if you'd like additional information. Or finally, you could maintain the status quo and decide that no changes should be made to local child care regulations to allow group daycare in unoccupied dwellings. So from the health department and from the operator standpoint, the primary advantage of this is that under their definitions, a group daycare home doesn't have to be necessarily occupied, and the regulatory requirements for a facility that's in a dwelling and has no more than 12 children are quite a bit lower than they would be if it was treated as a commercial building or a child care center. So this is a middle ground approach. So with that, I'd be open to any questions commissioners might have.
None.
One question. Do these rules apply the same if the child care service is available 24 hours a day as opposed to just let's say the traditional 7 to 7 or 6 to 6?
Well, that would be addressed through the conditional use permit application. So if you had a local group, whether it was the YMCA or some other group, and said, we want to put a modular home down in a neighborhood, but we want to operate it 24 hours a day, they would make that part of their application, and if the planning commission approved it to operate 24 hours a day, it could.
But the neighbors would obviously have
Neighbors would have a different view of it
opportunity.
if it was 24 hours
Right.
a day than traditional, but that would be part of the application and
Okay.
part of what would be reviewed on a case-by-case basis.
Good.
Oh, I just comment that this, another piece to address this childcare issue, and hopefully it,
This is not a panacea or cure-all, but it's just another piece to try to provide more options.
yes, still doesn't provide childcare workers, but,
Right.
I
We're
guess-
trying, we can only deal with the physical sides.
yeah. This valuation, is that something the county could take up to ease that?
Well, there's two ways, to deal with it. When I dealt with it before with preschools, what was happening is that, let's say I was a preschool provider and I was renting space in a particular church. What the county appraiser was saying is we're going to start taxing the church for the income that they're deriving from renting this out to preschools. So all of a sudden we had, I think there were 4 or 5 preschools that all got kicked out of churches who didn't want to lose their tax exemption. If you have everything set up to be a not-for-profit preschool operation, then that doesn't come into play. But if you're just an individual and you're renting space in a church and running a preschool, so there's one method by which you could do this, and you set up a not-for-profit entity that's going to be tax exempt. The other approach is to have some of the people involved in the daycare to try to persuade the county appraiser to change their view on these things. But that's just the experience I've had over the years, and I went and checked in the case of Four Seasons, and consistently the county appraiser it's been a preschool there forever, multi-generations, and they've consistently treated it as if it's a commercial property. Even though you drive by, it looks like a house, and it's in a residential neighborhood, but because it's not lived in, they treat it as commercial. But that's not something that we can control.
Yeah, and that astounds me that that's still in operation, the Four Seasons. I can recall when my kids were starting preschool, we couldn't get in. And
I actually attended that school in the late 70s.
My son is also a proud graduate.
You know, if we weren't in a child care shortage, I would maybe have some issues with this, but I think this is a necessary step given our situation.
The zoning is still considered residential, even though the appraiser calls it commercial. They won't have to sprinkle these buildings.
No, that's the whole point, is that it's kind of splitting the middle, that the state fire marshal, as long as the occupancy doesn't exceed 12, the state fire marshal and Kansas Department of Health and Environment is willing to treat it the same as if it's a occupied dwelling with 12 children. And if they're willing to do that, then it provides an option that is less strictly regulated than a child care center.
Yeah, because this is just amending the zoning ordinance, all the other rules and stuff that go with daycares.
Right.
follows
Still have
along,
the
so,
same
yeah.
fire inspections, health department inspections, all those things. This
Yeah.
just opens up a different option
Yeah.
For physically providing space to conduct a daycare.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the public on this item?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if not, I will bring it back. Go ahead.
Out of curiosity, what would typically be neighbors' reason to object to having a not lived in house serve.
Well, over the years at different hearings or complaints we got, it's that it's dark too much of the time, there's nobody there on weekends, it's not being supervised, no one knows what's going on, we can't tell if it's lived in or not lived in, it's more just creating an uncertainty, but it just has to do the feeling that if it's not occupied, that maybe it's not supervised. And so that's the feedback I've received over the years.
Yeah, I would think it'd be the additional traffic, you know, at certain times.
And because I've thought about the traffic, but if it's, if it's grandma's, daycare center, you get the same traffic, folks coming in.
Right.
And,
yeah, if it's 12, it's 12. So it means if it's occupied, you're getting the same amount of traffic as if it's unoccupied.
Yeah.
What I've heard is there's no one there on the weekends. It's not. There's no one there in the evening. No one seems to be monitoring what's going on there. That type of thing.
Okay.
And I guess I just thought of this when I think it was Commissioner Davis asked about the 24 hours, and that's one of the things we've talked about is, there's not daycare for that second or third shift. So when it says 12, is that 12 at a time? So I could have
12 per session.
Per session. Okay, so I could have a first shift at 12, and if I had a second or third shift, daycare.
You could have an evening shift of 12. So it's just
okay.
no more than 12 children at any one time.
Okay.
And the state has different ratios for how much staff you have to have based on the number of children, and 12 is the max that you can have in a residential setting.
Yeah, cracks me up. Somebody thinks with 12 kids over there, it's a quiet place. He was talking about it looks big. I would have thought the opposite.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. I guess my objection would be 12 noisy kids.
I was gonna say I don't think they had my kids or grandkids in any of those. So, okay, with that, I will bring it back to the commission for action.
Oh, lost my sheet. I move approval of ordinance number 23-11190 on first reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to concur with the recommendation of the Planning Commission and approve ordinance number 23-11190, adding group daycare homes providing care for no more than 12 children in an unoccupied dwelling to the list of conditional uses allowed in residential zoning districts. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That item passes 5-0. That will lead us to other business. Is there an item a commissioner would like to bring before the group?
Just one, and I spoke with the city manager briefly before the meeting. If you look at our rules of operation, it's those rules that accompany our agenda. And if you go to consent agenda, it'd be on the top of the second page of those additional items. In the past, citizens have asked, if a citizen could pull something off the consent agenda. And we do have a mechanism by which that can happen. The citizen can approach, I believe, the city manager or commissioner, and then request the commission to vote to take something off the consent agenda. But the citizen has the opportunity to do that before the meeting or during citizens forum. And when we look at placement of citizen forum, if that privilege to citizens is to be protected, the citizens forum would have to be before the consent agenda is addressed, or vice versa. It's just something to consider as we think again about placing citizens forum.
Right, and I wasn't aware until Commissioner Davis pointed it out that language was in there. I think that's a result of when we changed the order and put the citizens forum later in the meeting, and it was just an oversight of not amending that language. Another alternative could be that as part of the consent agenda, you could take public comment, whether that's open-ended public comment or whether that's public comment requesting that an item be removed from the consent agenda, either one. Coincidentally, I was kind of having those conversations amongst staff and with you as we met as a result of the deliberations we had before, but I hadn't picked up on the fact that language was in there until Commissioner Davis pointed it out to me. So I think we have some options. I do think it would take an amendment to this language, not just the chair's prerogative. So that's something that we would be happy to staff through for you, bring back as, at a minimum, I think you're looking at some form of amendment to the resolution, and we can lay out the options for you.
Because the consent agenda, obviously the packet goes out, and I'm talking out loud here, but when we talk about a citizen coming forward and asking for a consent agenda item to be removed, they would approach a commissioner or the mayor, and then it would take a majority vote at the city commission to remove it from the consent agenda.
Right.
So
this language contemplates that there's a slot on the agenda. In addition to approaching you ahead of the meeting, there's a slot on the agenda where they could come to the podium and make that request. So one thing that you could do as part of your procedure in considering the consent agenda is take comments from the public, whether they wanted to request anything be removed from the consent agenda. You could leave it that it's still the governing body's discretion whether you remove it from the consent agenda.
So is what you're suggesting, we're adding another category that says citizens' comments on the consent agenda?
That's one possibility. So much like you treat any other agenda item when you take public comment, you can take that level of comment at the consent agenda item, or as Commissioner Davis said, you could create some opportunity separate and distinct ahead of the consent agenda for them to make that request, whether that's citizens forum or some other category.
And to be more thorough, I was thinking we could ask for a written request and the reason why an item should be removed from consent agenda.
Yeah, so, we've had conversation before that public comment, the breadth of public comment that we take is not required, but if it's really at the governing body's discretion, and it's a function of transparency of our meetings. And so part of it is just, if you want to keep with the intent of them being able to come to you at the podium somewhat on the fly during the meeting, or whether you want to require that they make contact in advance.
And it may be someone who it could be one of us, out of town for a weekend, no access to email, and Monday at 3:30, oh wow, it's a meeting, and you look at the consent agenda, oh no, I was waiting for that, I wondered when that was going to come up. I mean, a person may legitimately not have the opportunity to notify us in writing ahead of time. I mean, just in terms of being transparent and maintaining as much communication as we can with our citizens.
Well, we talked about the communication levels pretty extensively last week, and I think if a citizen is following things that closely that has concern, here on this consent agenda, we approved spending $300,000. That's not taken lightly. So I would think if we received notification before the meeting.
Yeah, am I wrong to think that some communities don't, have a list available to, if you've really missed it since Thursday and you can't get online to look at our agendas or be apprised in any way of what's on the meeting agenda and what's on the consent agenda, and you just come here and you are surprised to see it on the agenda, couldn't there be a list where they asked to have it removed to be heard?
There are communities that require that citizens make contact just in advance to be able to address the governing body in general, set aside the consent agenda, and indicate their written request and their name. There's different levels of detail. So what I can tell you is that since this is adopted by resolution, it's definitely going to take some type of action on the governing body's part, one way or the other. We can certainly staff it through and take up, we can give you a little bit more background and kind of frame these questions for you. But in the interim, we do have a provision that was not accounted for when we amended the order.
I would think my first instinct would be to, since we need to do this by resolution, is change that paragraph, or that section B and that paragraph to read, by majority vote of the city commission upon request by a Salina resident directed to city staff or commissioner prior to the start of the meeting, period. And that gives someone the opportunity to come forward just before the meeting, and then that commissioner, I guess, has to feel like it's compelling and then needs to have a majority to agree with them.
And for what it's worth, and just as a clarification, this isn't a result of the action you took last week. This is the result of the action you took however long ago it was that we made that prior amendment. And so I think the more recent conversation caused it to catch our attention, but I'm not aware of a citizen in the intervening time being tripped up by this. But
So a citizen could approach the city clerk before the meeting?
Sure.
City staff or any of us.
Yep. In fact, when we say city staff, we might need to be more clear about that, just so that it is a limited group of city staff, not a random staff person.
And then that would be announced, I guess, at the beginning of the consent agenda that there was a request to.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I'd ask, since we will have to change the resolution, ask the staff to, staff it through. Hate to use the same word twice in a sentence, but.
I think I like the mayor's suggestion. I mean, how long have I been here? 8 years. I haven't seen anyone want to take anything off, from the public, take anything off the consent agenda and discuss it.
Well, there are a lot of complaints after a meeting. You didn't discuss it, wish y'all had discussed that, And sometimes we pull off items that other people want discussed. And I was not looking for this I was looking for something else in here, and I read that and read it, because someone had asked me 2 weeks ago, could I pull something off the consent agenda, and I honestly don't know. And I kind of forgot about the question, and then I read that, I said, maybe he could.
And again,
He could
apologize
ask.
if
He can't pull it off. He
could
could
ask.
ask to have it pulled off, yeah.
And I apologize if I'm drawing out the conversation, but Commissioner Linkowitz and Commissioner Longbine and I attended a league conference a couple months ago in Wichita. And then last week, Mayor Hoppick and Commissioner Linkowitz and incoming Commissioner Ivey and myself and Jacob Wood and Sean Hennessy attended ethics and civility training here that was conducted by the League of Kansas Municipalities in Salina. And the consistent message in both of those instances was that what Salina does in the way of taking public comment for each agenda item is the exception rather than the rule. The presenter in Wichita didn't call out Salina, but kind of said it almost incredulously that some communities take comment on every agenda item. And then the conversation that took place at the league training here in Salina, kind of the same thing. And then, each community can do it a little bit differently, but it's not uncommon for a community to require advance contact to address the commission just in what we would call citizens forum. My response to the training we had last week was it hasn't been that problematic for Salina to take comment on each agenda item. So just to add a little context in terms of what we currently do, probably exceeds what others might do, and then it's not uncommon to require people to make contact in advance.
Well, there's nothing wrong with setting the bar high. But I would, since the staff is obviously aware of the issues and things we might even think of, just see if they could bring us back something to correct
certainly.
this.
We
Because the way it's
can-
written now, we're not actually following it.
You have to bring us back something.
Right.
Appears like
We'll
we
start
have-
with the draft as I
there's
kind of
not-
understood it to be described, and then we certainly can have more conversation and amend it as you see fit.
Okay.
Thanks.
Commissioner Ryan, do you have any?
No, I don't, no.
You don't, okay.
Thank you.
It's more of a positive comment, speaking of raising the bar high. Our leaf cleanup service, I think, is worth mentioning, and I partook in that last week, and it's really nice that our community offers that, and the people that do that deserve some kudos.
I actually have two items. The first one is, it's always nice when we receive positive emails as a commission, and we just recently, I believe it was late last week or Saturday, received one concerning the broadcasting of our meetings, if everyone remembers that, and want to give a shout out to Mr. Gardner and his group that this individual was very complimentary of the quality of the recordings of our meetings, and compared it to some other communities. And we had some lengthy discussions several years ago. The three of us down here, you two didn't get to go through that, and it dealt with part of this. So it's good to see that we've met the goals we kind of had, and I appreciate what David and Scott are doing as far as trying to get more meetings out there, and we do the weekly update and stuff. So I think we with the lack of information out there because of newspapers and stuff, I think it's going to be more and more important that we continue to expand that and make that department more visible to the community. So again, thanks for that comment from that individual.
Scott Gardner's the department head. David Hawksworth is kind of the face of it. They're doing the videos, but there is one other individual that deserves recognition, and that's James Curtis in the Media Relations Division as well. Those three guys are the ones that make that happen.
Thank you for that. So, the other one is a shout out to the Parks and Rec department. We had pajamas and pancakes with the mayor Friday night, and I did not wear pancakes. I didn't wear pajamas, but I know they changed their format this year, had it at the field house, and had over 400 participants. So it was very well attended. Kudos to them for trying something new. They had photo booths. They had arts and crafts stuff set up, plus the pancakes, and it was well received. So to that staff, we appreciate it, and congratulations on something well done. So it's always good to hear that, isn't it? Something. So okay, with that, we will move into citizens forum. This is an opportunity for someone to come forward with if they have a comment on something that was not on the agenda, and we ask that you give your name, where you're from, and have your comments 3 minutes or less.
Madam Salina, are we going to have an update on your ethics policy, your resolutions? Because this is getting old. Because you've been discussing other items up here. So can we get a printout of it in the future?
Sure. Okay, anyone else? Okay, if not, we have an executive session, and I'm going to ask for 40 minutes, and after we approve that, I'll kind of let the public and the commission know how we're going to move forward on this. So,
All right. Mr. Mayor, I move that City Commission recess into executive session for 40 minutes to discuss the city manager's evaluation based upon the need to discuss personnel matters of the non-elected personnel pursuant to KSA 75-4319, Section B, subsection 1. The open meeting will resume in this room at, looks like 6
Just say
6:20?
6:15. You said 40 minutes? 6:15?
Yeah, 6:15.
6:15.
Okay, got a motion, a second, to move into executive session for 40 minutes with the meeting resuming in this room at 6:15. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. What we're going to do is the commission will go into executive session, the five of us. At some point, we will ask Natalie Fisher, Head of Human Resources, to join us for a bit. We will then ask her to leave the executive session, and as a commission, we'll do some further discussion, and then at some point, we will ask Mr. Scragg to join us. So that's our 40 minutes. We'll see if we can get that all done in 40 minutes. So we will be back here, and there is a possibility for action after that. discussion, but like usual, we didn't budget quite enough time, so let's try another 20 minutes if we could.
All right. Mr. Mayor, I move the City Commission recess into executive session for 20 minutes to discuss the city manager's evaluation based upon the need to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel pursuant to KSA 75-4319, Section B, subsection 1. The open meeting will resume at this room at 6:36 p.m.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to go into executive session till 6:36. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? We will be back in this room at 6:36, and we expect to have some action, I believe.
238174.
Well, might not be.
May not, yeah.
Sometimes I assign numbers before the items.
Okay, we're back in session. We are waiting for a updated resolution number, and once we have that, we will read our resolution and go from there. So right now, we're in a holding pattern for a couple minutes.
Sorry.
Nope, I should have asked for that earlier. Greg's not as fast as he used to be. Thank you, Mr. Bingston.
It will be, actually, resolution 23-8181.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we have concluded and met with Ms. Fisher and with Mr. Scragg concerning the city manager's 2023 evaluation, and I believe we have a resolution to be read.
That we do. This is resolution number 23-8181, a resolution concluding the 2023 evaluation of the city manager's performance and review of the city manager's base salary and awarding merit increase. Be it resolved by the governing body of the city of Salina, Kansas, the governing body has advised staff of its intent to award the city manager with a merit-based increase of $7,778, which is a 4% merit increase, to his base salary of $194,439, resulting in a new base salary of $202,217, effective December 16th, 2023, in accordance with the city manager's anniversary date and evaluation due date noted in his employment contract, and that the Director of Human Resources will take such actions as are necessary to implement the change.
Okay, can I have that?
Yes.
Okay, we have had the resolution 8181 read. Do I have a motion? And again, this is for Mr. Scragg's 2023 evaluation. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 23-8181. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That item passes 5-0. Mr. Scragg, we thank you for your dedication to the city of Salina. We've had a lot going on, not just this year, but the last several years, and I think your leadership has been greatly appreciated. We've seen our financial statements stabilized. We're moving forward on some of the issues we've been dealing with for a long time as far as housing, and there's still things that we're going to be dealing with, we know, coming up, and we appreciate your leadership and your dedication to the city.
I try to tell our new employees and remind our current employees that public service is as much a calling as it is a job or an occupation, and I sincerely believe that. We have a great team, and I feel like we are really making some great strides. So I appreciate it, and it's an honor to serve.
Yes.
I would add that the 4% increase is in line with what all city employees were eligible for.
Correct. So, okay, with that, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? See everyone back here Monday.